New York, and on the new Hot 97 app. Ebro in the morning on Hot 97.
Ebro in the morning. It's Laura Styles. It's Rosenberg. It is Human Trafficking Month, which didn't know was a thing, but I'm glad it's a thing.
Awareness Month.
Awareness Month. Excuse me. Human Trafficking Awareness Month. Give it up one time for the NYPD.
Yeah.
Human Trafficking. How would I frame you guys? What exactly is the name of the office? Grab a microphone and introduce yourself.
So my name is Lieutenant Christopher Sharp. I'm the commanding officer of the Human Trafficking Team. That falls underneath the Detective Bureau. There are multiple bureaus underneath NYPD, and then there are multiple divisions underneath the Detective Bureau. So we're the Human Trafficking Team underneath the Detective Bureau, underneath the Vice Division.
So you guys at all times are paying attention to young girls coming in and out of the city that might be involved in some sort of sex trafficking, et cetera, pimping, prostitution. What other forms of human trafficking?
Labor trafficking.
Labor, okay.
So there's 4 categories of trafficking, if you want to look at it this way. There's labor trafficking, as O mentioned, or Detective Williams mentioned. There is child exploitation. There's sexual exploitation, and then there's organ removal. We've never had an organ removal case. I'll be honest with you. We get one, I'm gonna get a little nervous, right?
Wow.
But
we hear about them on the internet.
right. Well, you see them
People
in
wake
movies
up in
too.
a bathtub in Las Vegas. And,
Right,
Correct.
yeah.
Right. So 99% of our cases are sexual trafficking cases. But that's not to say that there aren't more labor trafficking cases or more sexual trafficking cases. It's just that they're underreported, right? So inherently, when you talk about prostitution, you know when you look at prostitution, you kind of look at it and you know what it looks like. But with like a labor trafficking case, like an example is like nail salons or maybe domestic servants, right? Something like that, or day laborers, like I don't care where Home Depot, where you live, there's a Home Depot and you see guys standing out front looking for work, right? Inherently, when you look at labor trafficking cases, you don't know by just looking at it that it's inherently illegal.
And they probably are opting in a way because they want the money, right?
Well, because of necessity.
They're probably initially.
Yes,
opt-in.
depending on what you're right, depending on the type. So depending on what you're talking about. For day laborers, yeah, they're probably opting in. But for some domestic servants, they may not know what they're getting into. Nail salons, some of those employees may not know what they're getting into, and then the next thing they know, they're being moved around. Same thing for prostitution, sex trafficking. You may have somebody that says, "Oh yeah, I want to do this for a living" initially, but they have no idea what they're getting themselves into, and then they find themselves quickly overhead,
In over their head.
in over their heads. And a lot of it is a lot of young people that are really. That's a lot of our cases.
How much of those cases are young runaways or people who are fighting with their family and think that they can take their lives into their own
A fairly
hands?
significant amount of the girls are
Grab the
runaways.
mic and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Detective Gonzalez Elizabeth. Yes, most of our cases are runaways, victims that, are having trouble at home and end up in a bad situation or with a person that they feel at that time is being good to them and giving them what they're not getting at home. And then next thing you know, they're being prostituted and getting no money and forced, and they can't leave,
And when you get into the can't leave part, right? Some of that is literally just they've been scared and threatened to the point that they feel like wherever they go, this person will be able to find them and harm them.
Exactly, the fear.
Because they do things to establish that in the beginning. They take their cell phone, they figure out where their family lives at, they take nude pictures of them. So that's where the coercion and the force part comes in. If you don't do this, I'm going to send these pictures to your family. Or I'm going to put them on the internet, stuff like that. Sometimes it's not always physical abuse. A lot of times it can be, but a lot of times it's that, and then they shame them that, or they tell them that they're going to shame them to their family. So then they think, well, I can't go back to my family now because now my family knows that I'm involved in this.
You guys saw the R. Kelly documentary, yes?
Yes.
Any of the behavior or instances in that documentary did you recognize as
Absolutely.
without a doubt,
doubt.
this is human trafficking?
Right. So obviously it's Human Trafficking Month, and I can tell you I watched it and I was like, oh, I recognize some of those signs immediately as some of the same things that we see involved in human trafficking. And just to go back a couple minutes, when we're talking about sex trafficking, just to give you the definition of what it is like that the city looks at, it's simple. It's 3 things. It's force, right? I assault you. I tell you you're going to go work out, answer the phone, do dates. You tell me no, I punch you in the face, so I assault you. It's fraud. I tell you, oh, listen, we're going to get this money together because we're going to get this big house and 2.5 children and a dog and all this other stuff, right? Or it's coercion, and pretty much it's, I tell you I got a bullet for everybody in your family, just like Detective Williams said, and that's what it's going to, that's what it's going to be. Essentially, what you're looking at is there's pieces of that now. If you advance or profit from putting somebody into prostitution and you lie to them, if you take their identification, if you blackmail them, if you threaten them in combination with taking their identification. So there's a lot of different subcategories underneath that will get you sex trafficking. If you take them out and you give them drugs to get them high and then have them go sleep with somebody, right? And you take the money, that's sex trafficking.
So from what we saw in the R. Kelly story, why wouldn't somebody like R. Kelly be on the hook for human trafficking? How hard is it to convict? Like, what's the...
Well, different cities deal with crimes differently.
Okay.
So because we don't know how Chicago deals with that, we can't really comment on that because we don't know how they deal with these crimes specifically.
right.
Exactly.
So we don't have any.
But in looking at it, if let's say that what was going on with R. Kelly happened here in New York City?
Oh, we would prosecute them, or we would try to
Well,
prosecute
so,
them.
right, go ahead.
Well, first you need a victim to step forward and say this is taking place.
So
If
that's an important piece.
Yeah, that's an important piece. If we don't have that victim, we don't have a case. And as you can see, a lot of victims don't speak up, don't say what's going on, and some, like now, until years later, are saying their story of what's taking place and stuff like that. But you need a victim.
Is there a statute of limitations on these things?
The statute of limitations is like 7 years, right?
Is it different state to state?
It is different
Yes.
state to say. And what you have to keep in mind is sex trafficking is pretty young when it comes to laws in New York. Sex trafficking didn't come on the books until 2006, 2007. Wow. So you can have someone who is actively involved in sex trafficking, forced into prostitution, and they may have all the evidence that shows, yes, this person definitely was being trafficked in 2004, but the law wasn't on the books. So you can't get somebody for sex trafficking when the law wasn't created, right? You can't you can't have someone that says, oh, yeah, I definitely...
And R. Kelly stuff was 90s and 2000, like...
Right, so that's one of the things that you have to keep in mind, right? It's like Liz says, I can tell you, we have a lot of cases. We have a lot of cases, right? But we have people that don't want to cooperate in the prosecution because they've had damage done to them, right?
Of course,
and the
you're
first thing you want to do
traumatized.
is you want to separate as far as you can from the damage that was done to you. And then the last thing you want to be thinking about is, oh, well, the prosecution of a case. I can tell you 99% of our complainants are dealing with housing issues, number one. Where am I going to live? Education. Did I ever finish high school? Employment, job training and employment. Where am I going to make money, et cetera, so on. And a lot of them don't want to work at McDonald's and wear a uniform. That's not what I want. I was making $1,000 a week, quote unquote. And now I don't want to be, doing this, lined up here, et cetera, so on.
I want to make 15 an hour.
I want to make that quick money, or I want something that's going to give me that.
And I want to make it
life.
off the books. I don't want to pay taxes on it.
Right. Medical care, child care. So they have a lot of our victims have a lot of immediate needs, right? And so to worry about sometimes the criminal prosecution case, they're not worried about that. And our team is not worried about that. We lose lots of cases because we don't get to the prosecution level because we're just worried about taking care of the person. And so there's times that we will get cases and we will just say, okay, listen, you're not ready. About 2 months ago, we had a young woman that was brought up here from Virginia with another young woman. She didn't know what she was kind of getting into. And we paid a $103 ticket for get her back on Amtrak. Let's just get you back down to Virginia because you know what? Right now, the prosecution case is not the most important thing.
And you say that because taking it all the way to trial creates a problem for this individual beyond what you guys are capable of protecting them from? Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily. What initially the damage that's done to them while they're being trafficked, emotionally, they so damaged that sometimes you have to get them beyond that first. So, like the lieutenant said, you help them with housing, you help them with social services to try to get their self-esteem and everything built back up. So then it clears their mind to say, okay, yes, this is wrong. I need to go forward and prosecute with this. But sometimes that takes a little while to do that.
Right.
So you don't just want to, because for us, as soon as they go through this process and they have the courage to come tell us, sometimes the process can seem a little tedious where they have to come back and come back and come back and come back. And sometimes we try to buffer that to not victimize them again, let them come into their own and say, let's go, now I want to talk about it.
How often do you see this on a cultural level where it's family, dad, uncle, they just living in this lifestyle, it's
Some of
generational?
our cases are like that. So, some of our cases, unfortunately, are family members.
Right. So just to give some examples of where are pimps hunting, right? Port Authority, we have a lot of young kids that come in, they want a slice of the Big Apple. If I can make it there, I can make it anywhere,
They
right?
say New York City's one of the major hubs.
It's number 5. So they're out of the top 20 cities in America, New York City is number 5. Now that's both labor trafficking and sex trafficking. Certain markets will tell you, or certain non-governmental organizations, they'll tell you 65% of it is labor trafficking. And I'm not saying that they're not right, but I'm just telling you what we see as cases appearing before us. What we see is 99% of our cases involves sex trafficking, and just labor trafficking is underreported. But where we see complainants coming in, we see them coming into Port Authority, right? Oh, I'm a young person, I can make it there, et cetera, so on. And for teenagers, any teenager that's out on the street within about 48 hours, they engage in what's called survival sex, right? They're having sex for money because they have no food, they have nowhere to stay, and they have no connections, all right? If you identify with the LGBTQ community, 75% of those kids out on the street will become targets for survival sex and engage in prostitution. So that's just some of the hard raw numbers. But where are they also being recruited? High schools, all right, middle schools, the average, social media, a
is
big place.
big.
Friend of a friend of a friend. Oh, I'm gonna go to hang out with my friend. She or he's taking me to a party. We meet up with somebody else. Next thing I know, this is where we're at, right? We have people that have family businesses. We've made arrests of multiple people in families because, that's the family business. And I mean on all levels. I don't mean just.
What do you mean? So you mean like there's one family member who's pimping out other family members?
No.
That's like the family business.
It's the family business. So.
They recruit and things
right.
like
So
that.
let's say,
I
so right.
see.
So you have a brother and sister. Your brother and sister is also in radio, right? And so you do this. Maybe they do producing. Maybe somebody else is doing something behind the scenes engineering, right? Well, they have the same business. So one person's the primary recruiter. Another person runs the prostitution pimp business. Somebody else is going out driving. All right, I'll take you to dates. And so we've arrested on all levels. We've arrested across the board. Siblings, and then we've gone up the chain. I've arrested parents.
Right.
So I've arrested the child or the detectives. In our office, we've arrested parents that are involved in the business as well.
And allowing their kids to go out here hoeing like that.
Or forcing their kids.
Or forcing their kids.
Right.
Wow. How often does a girl thinking she gonna get some money stripping turn into much more than that? How often is that like the gateway into this lifestyle?
I'm not certain if that's the gateway, but that absolutely opens up their appetite for it, because dance stripping is it's not necessarily legal depending on the age, but then you get introduced to the pimps that's there or the VIP rooms, and so sometimes that can be the gateway to prostitution.
And the money's good, and you
And the
keep
money's
going
good.
back, and
Right.
yes.
And then they have parties also where there's, girls are dancing and they're pimps and they're recruiting and they're looking. And then next thing you know, the guy hooks up with the girl, the girl tends to fall in love with the guy. Next thing you know, come on, you got to make some money. We got bills to pay. I'm feeding you. You living here. You got to help me out. And then she becomes a prostitute, and doesn't even know it. So we have cases like that too. And those cases are hard because the girls tend to fall for the guys. So when it's time to prosecute and for them to come, you really have to work hard to convince them like this is not the life and we're here to help you. And this person should be put in jail. And that's what we do because it's very difficult, for them to just move on.
How do you deal with immigrants that are, victims that are undocumented and are scared to come forward because of their status?
So it's interesting that you say that because Liz's family is from the Dominican Republic. My mother's from Trinidad, right? And O's father was born in Puerto Rico, right? Although, right, U.S. territory. So we don't care about people's immigration status.
Right.
We don't care at all. In fact, what I'll tell you is the Vice Division has the only 2 people in the entire department that are allowed to sign what's called a trafficking visa, T visa. It's not a green card, welcome to the United States, you're now a citizen or a resident. What it is a consideration that you may have been lured here for false pretenses. Goes back to what I was telling about fraud, right? So imagine, if you will, somebody tells my mother in Trinidad, come up here, you're gonna be the manager of our restaurant. And now she gets here, and then they tell her, nah, you're not gonna be a manager, you're gonna be out on this track, working out on the street, or you're gonna be answering this phone doing dates, right? That's fraud. So
You said doing dates.
That's
That's what
in
they
the
call it.
term, in what we call it doing dates, right? That's
So you picking up the phone and escort service.
Right, so escort service.
Got it,
As we call it, doing dates. That's what. So thank you for clearing it up. And so if somebody tells my mother that when she lands here, that's what it is. It's fraud. And so we don't care about your immigration status. We know there are people out there actively hunting to recruit people to bring them here for fraudulent purposes, and then they become victims of crimes. And we will go after that person, that enterprise, just as hard as we would anybody that lives here. Again, just a couple things too. The average age for commercial sex, right? Unfortunately, 99% of our cases are young women. Do we think this is happening to men? 100%. It is underreported. 100%.
Because men don't want to emasculate themselves. They're too
Right.
cool.
They don't want to report it.
100%. 100%. So 99% of our cases are young women that are complainants or seen, right, that we see. But it's not young women that are being brought from other countries. We have some of that, 100%. But it is people that are in the neighborhood. 13 is the average age, and it's girls in your neighborhood. It's girls in your school. It's girls in your high school. And one of the things we recognized very quickly is that we needed to do more training around that. And so we have 5,000 school safety agents throughout all of New York City schools, and we trained all 5,000 school safety agents last year because we wanted them to start paying attention. You see a young girl who in September was coming to school and, not frumpy, but, she kind of looked different. Like her hair wasn't done. She kind of just looked plain Jane. Like everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? And then throughout the year, you kind of see her now. She's got her nails done. She's got a fresh new bundle, right? So, right, that's right. That's just things we learn, right? She's dressed up and she's telling you she has some job somewhere. And, the school safety agent says, oh, you look so pretty. Where'd you get that job? And she can't tell you. Right? Or, unfortunately, young people, another thing we see a lot of is branding, right? So at one point, we interview a couple of young women, and each woman has the word Romeo tattooed on the side of their neck, right? Yeah. Independently, like, right? It's a quick question. Who's Romeo? Or you're 15, 16. Why do you have somebody's name tattooed? Like, hopefully, it's not, like, what's going on here? And so it's a quick question, but we see that.
That's been going on a long time. Girls in the neighborhood where I grew up, in California, was definitely, you would see, we knew, because a lot of this went on in my family and, a lot of this was pimping and just part of culture, right? And that's why I brought up the cultural question, right? Because in Oakland, California, right, the Bay Area, where the Mac was actually...
It's prevalent.
It's cultural. Like, it is 100% like... It's just what happens. And you know what I mean? It's kind of, people get in it. And because of America and capitalism and money, you want that? You want to make real money out here? Or you just want to work a regular job?
Right.
And people want that. They want that money. They want to do it for that money. They don't want to, they want to go, quote unquote, the easy route. Exactly. Or the fun route. You out every night, you partying. You're taking drugs, you having sex, you're making a lot of money, and rinse, repeat.
Until they realize it's not fun no more.
Right. Yeah. Until it wears out, and now you can't leave.
Right.
Or they realize that this is not what I thought. This is not what I thought. And that's what we're doing. We're dealing with a lot of young people that think, oh, this is going to be some highlight. In a month, we're going to have money. We're going to go buy this house. And what they're doing is where we find them, they're sleeping in cars. Right? We get them in the back and sleeping in cars. They have nowhere, right? They're standing out on tracks, right? They're standing out on tracks on the street working, in every borough, right? And when you mention cultural, what I'll tell you is it's not just one culture, it's every culture.
Well, I don't mean cultural meaning like it's one specific ethnicity.
Right.
I mean like cultural,
like
it's a
No,
part
but
of
that's what I'm saying. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
Every culture has some type of allowance where this is built in, whether it's appearing as doing dates through a phone or escort services, whether it's a massage parlor, right? And then you got something from a massage parlor. So we see traditional brothels, whether it's, game is running out of people's residences, right? Whether it's hotels, right? We've seen people show up and think, oh, well, you're going to pay me $900. So it doesn't even have an economic scale. Like, we've got the $50 arrest, and then we have a $900 arrest, And so you think about that, right? So it's all over the place.
How often are you coming across this in the corporate world in New York? Wall Street, politicians, people who are very high power individuals participate. I mean, obviously the big Elliot Spitzer thing was a thing, right? But that couldn't be the only guy out here doing it.
Right. So,
or people.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because what we actively do is we've changed the dynamic of the way we do business. Pretty much when I first got there in 2016, we used to wait for the phone to ring. And around 2017, I started to question, why aren't we going after these? Why aren't we going after the demand side, the Johns, the guys looking for this? And so we do that. We now go after the John side, right? And we don't care about, what we do is, just to put it simply, we put up fake ads every day. So every day we're on the internet.
I had that down in the notes. Does NYPD post ads on websites where Johns look for prostitutes?
100%.
And what happens if I reply to one of those ads?
100%. So you go respond to an ad. You may not be responding to some regular citizen. You may be responding to us. And so we have a program, we call it the TCDM, the Targeted Communication Deterrent Message. And it was splashed in the New York Post last year. Essentially what happens is you call or text one of my numbers, we get you. And 30% of the time we get your name. Or we get your name, we get your address. 60% of the time we get a name, we know at least where you live, right? And then there's sometimes people have these phones that they think, you won't track me, you won't be able to get me. But then we get you through social media, because some of your phones are tied to social media. And then what we do is we send you deterrence messages. So let's say your average Joe.
Wow, so you give them a chance to get up out of here.
Well, we give them a warning that tells them you can go to jail for up to 7 years if you show up at a hotel or you meet with us, et cetera, so on. So, right.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Right.
Stop right now.
We have to remind God.
Wow.
We have to remind Johns that, listen, you can lose your family, you can lose your friends, you could lose your job depending on how this works. Johns that get arrested, you could go to jail and for up to a year, right? You may have to go to John school. So now you're gonna have to tell your boss for 4 Fridays in a row, I gotta go at 2:00 for an appointment 4 Fridays in a row. Now, whose employer, if you're supposed to be working 9 to 5, is going to say, what do you mean 4 Fridays in a row? You got to go somewhere. You got a meeting at 2:00 on a Friday in the afternoon. You may have to pay a civil penalty, right?
So y'all schedule it at 2:00 to actually screw up their life.
Well, not.
No.
Look,
Right.
I'm just saying
What we're
that's
doing
a
is
deterrent.
right.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
As a
If I gotta
deterrent,
show
what
up
we're
somewhere
saying
on Friday-
is you need to think about.
Yeah.
You're out there, you could be doing damage to some 16, 15, 17-year-olds,
That's
right?
right.
And so you're a grown individual, right? This is not the way to get done, because you don't know what this person that you're encountering with. You think it's an economic transaction, and it's much more than that, right? This person is a victim of a crime, right? They may be forced into do this. They may be they may be involved in a whole lot more stuff, right? And so this is not the best market for you to be in, and you need to recognize. But the honest truth is the individual demand side buyer does not care unless we remind them of what you personally have to lose in the equation. And you can personally lose a lot if you get involved and you come up and we catch it. And we make arrests all the time.
And even like that, you'd be surprised how many individuals continue to answer the ads.
Well, yeah, because
Wow.
they're
Yeah.
turned on by the danger. It's the danger of the unknown that gets, these people off.
And if somehow they slip through, they get the text and they just keep pushing and they still go through with it anyway. We set up operations. Is anybody familiar with how to catch a predator?
Yeah.
We do stuff like that. Like we catch them at the hotels.
Hotel hops, yeah.
Yeah.
We catch them in hotels. We catch them. We arrest people at Wendy's.
Right.
You show up.
We
We're going to catch
So
you.
so with that, right, because we all know the hotels in the city where it's like, who stays at this hotel? Are these hotels ever held accountable or they're just running their business and they're allowed to?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The hotels depending. If it's a nice hotel, they really don't know what's going on. And when you go rent a room, they're not going to ask you why you're renting a room or you
Right, but
bringing.
they got day rates out here
Yeah.
and all type of things going
Now,
on.
Brooklyn is a different, they just turn a blind eye and it's like they probably know what's going on, but pretend that they don't know what's going on. So.
In Brooklyn, the whole borough.
Well, no.
Different. No, I'm saying, I went Brooklyn, but yeah.
So you have to look at it this way, right? So we've been all over the city. O and I were cops together in the Bronx. Liz was a cop in Brooklyn, right? So what I'll tell you is that every precinct knows the troubled hotels. Let's put it that way, right? Where a lot of 911 calls are being paced because of maybe a robbery, maybe she stole my credit card. So right, all the precincts track their troubled hotels, and so. When I was a cop in the 4-7 precinct, I knew the frequent flyer hotels, and if I got a 911 call there, I'm like, oh yeah, trouble is running, right? So it's not all hotels. It's just like everything else, right? You're right. You have some hotels that nobody would stay there, right? It's dingy. If you get somebody that's telling you, and we've had people driving around. We had 2 gentlemen driving around in a car, and pretty much they got stopped for whatever the traffic infraction was. And so they told the officer, I'm not from the area. I'm looking for a hotel. Well, when he showed his driver's license, his driver's license says he's from the area. So he's like, yo, you said you weren't from here. You from here. Like, where are you going? Oh, I'm looking for this hotel, named this hotel. The officer immediately recognized, you going there? There's something going on. And it turns out there was 2 guys in the front seat. There was a young woman in the back seat. The young woman in the back seat, when you asked, like, what's your name? What's his name? His name is Tiger. No, his name is not Tiger.
Even Tiger Woods' real name ain't Tiger.
Right, it's not Tiger. Right, you just stole my line, right? But that's my point.
Right.
So pretty much what they did is they put it together very quickly, and what they found out that she was a 14-year-old, and they were about to start business, right? And so they were taking her to that target hotel because they know that's good for business, right? So, like Detective Gonzalez said, it's not every hotel.
That's right.
There are definitely some hotels out there. And do we address that? Yes. It's called the nuisance abatement process. Mm-hmm. So if we can tie in the management to say that the management is taking a piece of the business, I'm a pimp. I pay off the girl or the guy at the front desk. Hey, listen, if anybody comes in, redirect them to my room. Here's $50 for the night, et cetera, so on. Then we will try to nuisance abate you. We will try to close your hotel because you are not performing a legitimate business.
And I get obviously because I've been seeing this my whole life, right? Whether it's cousins, my dad was involved, I got all that. You have this in our society, right? You have people who want that money and they want that money now and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get the money, right? But then you have obviously people who want to go about doing things the right way, right? And there's laws and there's, as you pointed out, there are young people who don't know what they're getting into, harming themselves, and you as the adults or whatever are taking advantage of this young person, right? To make money, right? How do you guys, on a day-to-day, you're going through this every day, right? So this is what you do day in and day out. In your mind, how do you reconcile and I'll go back to the cultural part of who we are as, this is all over the world, so I guess as people who are, trying to figure out a way to, feed families or, get rich quick or whatever it is. How do you guys participate in the cultural change aspect of this? Because is that making sense what I'm saying? Like this is more,
like how we
this
don't
goes
take it
deeper
personal.
than just like, one generation or, this one mistake that this teenager's making because they're running away and they're like, I'm going to use my body to make money. Right? This goes deeper than that. This goes to how they're being treated in the home, how that, and so on and so forth. How are we working to
like what the
break
lieutenant,
the cycle, I guess?
Like the lieutenant was saying, first we try to address the emotional things. Like if they need therapy or if they need social service or something like that, we try to go chip away at it at like that, to get them the services, to get them back strong, to show them that this cycle has to stop. So we try to attack it that way first. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. But like you said, if it's cultural and it's something that's been going on for so long, sometimes it takes a little while. But we work with them until we get them to a place where they're good enough, where they're strong enough to say, okay, this is enough and I need to break this cycle. Right.
We also do a lot of community awareness.
Right.
So, again, we go on attack about certain things, right? So community awareness is a big thing. And so we do a lot of speaking engagements, public. We do. So I'll tell you that we do a lot of internal training. We do all new police officers, all new people being promoted sergeant, being promoted to lieutenant. We've done new captains being promoted. We've done all of community affairs, 650 people in the domestic violence unit in the department. So we do a lot of awareness on our side to say, hey, listen, be cognizant of some of the warning signs when you're going out and interacting with people, right? And then we will take almost any community engagement, right? So last year, went to is the Power Girls?
Yes.
All right. So did a speaking engagement at it was a somebody that's running like a girls
Group in a high
girls
school.
group in a high school around sports. And they called us and asked us, could we come and speak? And I was like, oh, all right, it's an all-girls group. Let's send some girls. Let's send some girls to go talk to girls. Because you don't need me in front of you. You need people that look like you to talk to you, right?
They know what you're going through.
Right, and and so, so we'll talk to anybody. That's one of the reasons we're here. You have 10 million people listening to your radio show.
He's like 5, but
All
we in the zone.
right, right. So right,
We'll take it.
Right,
We in
but
the
that's
zone.
the
We
point,
in the
right?
zone.
So I read up some statistics. You had 3.3 million in 2011. So I was like, I can't find anything more recent. So all right, I'll estimate that doubled, right? But the whole point is you got a lot of people listening, and a lot of the people that listen to your radio station, unfortunately, are victims. There are complainants.
Well, yeah,
right?
because we got
And
black and brown people. We got people living in poverty. We have a lot of, first generation people trying to figure it out. And that's why I brought it up.
Right.
That's why I keep bringing up culture, right? Because within hip hop is street culture. There's a lot of strip club. There's a lot of drug talk, drug dealers, the glamorization, what's the word?
Glamorization of it.
Glamorization
100%.
of it. And so it's embedded. Look, even me, my father was hustling and doing that. You know what I'm saying? And he was a college graduate and still wanted to be in that street lifestyle because he wanted to get at that big bread. He didn't want to make $35,000 a year, right? He wanted to get at that big money. I have a cousin who ran an escort service in Las Vegas, a legit escort service where it was legitimate, right? Where in that culture out there, it's like, look, if they over 18, they sign up to do it. It is what it is, and he made millions of dollars doing so, right? But once again, it was cultural, right? It was like, oh, this is cool. Not thinking about the damage of the human beings, right? Just for the sake of making money.
And one thing that's good about this interview is that, like we said in the beginning, sometimes when these girls get into this stuff, they take their phones, they cut them off from social media, they cut them off for their family, but en route to a date, they might be listening to y'all show.
Yep.
They might hear this. And they might say, oh, snap, we could get out of this. They might look at that as a calling because you guys reach so many people, so many young people. And when they don't have their phones and when they don't have no contact with the outside world, then this might be their only ally. This might be their
and
only
also
way
I
of
think
hearing
even
it.
deeper than that, are you willing to put your physical health, mental health, right, secondary to your bank account? Because that's what we're talking about, right? Like, that's what this really gets at. It's not all the time, but for some people, I'm sure you guys come across it a lot, like, yo, I'm getting money. Stay the fuck out of my business. Like,
Right.
we out here getting money. Why you messing up my money?
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
We get that.
It's always good when you're making money, but then when you're getting, beat up and stumped, and it's like then it's not even worth it because the
Your name's
abuse.
Elizabeth?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth? Remember the girl we had called? This was
Right.
like last year?
Yeah,
'Cause-
we had a young woman who was in the business, and then she
No,
eventually
she was
got
out now. She was in real
yeah,
estate.
she eventually got out. She was in real estate, but she said that if her real estate gig didn't go well, she would consider
And
going back.
she was from a 2-parent home,
Right.
right? Mom is, according to what she told us, there was no problems there. Went to college, right? But wanted to get at this money. Decided on this lifestyle. Ended up getting her ass kicked, pistol whipped, in jail. Been through it all. Came out on the other side, got into real estate, and I said, but would you go back to it? She was like, if I needed the money. It was all about the money.
You know what? We do a lot of interviews with a lot of victims and a lot of girls, like let's say when they get picked off on the track. And a lot of older females, we find that they've been in the life so long that it's like you said, I've been making this money, it's easy money. I want to do it, no one is forcing me. And it's like, there's nothing we could do. We could offer them the services that we have, but they've been in the life so long that they don't want to,
that's the norm.
leave it. Exactly. They're so used to the money. But we want to reach the young, the young girls, because there's I have spoken to some girls and they're like, listen, if we had, like, let's say your team when I was like 13 years old, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at right now. And at that time, unfortunately, I guess they didn't have like the services that, that we tend to offer them now, and we come out and we speak to them and, that's what I tend to get from them. But, at the age that they're already like older, it's just like, I've been doing this for so long. This is what I do, easy money. Like, I'm going to keep doing it. And like you said, if they have a job and it doesn't go well and they got to go back to that to make quick money, they're going to do it because that's what they've been doing.
So I think there's a couple of things. I think, one, it's not easy money. It's not easy, right? And it's the same thing about safety, right? There's a certain safety. They're not safe. You're not safe. If you have to worry about physically getting assaulted, if you had to come to work today here and you had to worry about possibly getting assaulted today coming here, you would not feel safe to come to this environment. So it's not.
Well, rappers hate me, so
right,
it's not, my head's on a swivel.
Right.
You know what I mean? My head's always on a swivel.
Put the blue uniform on. You get some of that too. I share that, right? So the point is that, right, it's not safe. You're not safe. And you don't feel necessarily comfortable, right? You're doing it because, yes, you're right. You're chasing the paper, right? But the point is that we have victims. The youngest victim we ever had was 12 years old in a hotel room, left on her own with a phone and like a bag of McDonald's, start making this money. The oldest victim we've had is a 37-year-old. So, right, we recognize there's some people that are adults now and that may make a choice to, 21, 18.
Especially with the climate and the way things are with the job market and
I can make that
price
choice.
To stay in New York City.
Correct.
Et cetera,
I can make that choice and I may actively want to be physically, sexually engaged with someone, right? So we don't determine everyone. So the way to best say it is, some people will tell you if you're 25 years old, right, and you're performing prostitution, you're engaged in prostitution, you're a sex trafficking victim, right? I will tell you that we've engaged with some people that are adults, and this is their choice, and we cannot turn them away from what they want to do. Right. We can only educate them and try to offer them the best services, which goes back to what I said about sometimes we don't worry about criminal cases. We worry about just helping you, and we can offer you services, and we can point you in the direction to go in. But it's interesting what you said because you said your cousin ran a legitimate business with as long as you're over 18, right? This is part of the what I want to bang home. We get 12-year-old victims. They're not making a conscious decision to be engaged in this business, right?
Not.
They're not, legally, you can engage legally in New York, you're 17 years old, you can decide that you want to have sex with someone, right? 100%, right? But you cannot tell me at 17 that you actively decide that you want to be in prostitution and you want to sleep with
they don't know what they
5, 10 different days.
They don't know the emotional
Right.
I've seen it firsthand. They don't know the emotional, long-term emotional ramifications of what that's doing to their body, their mind, separating their mind from their body. Like that whole, I've seen it firsthand of people who they feel trapped. They're trapped by the money. They're trapped geographically trapped. They're, you know what I mean? They don't want to go home to their family because their family's going to be like, so where you been?
And then they
you know
develop
what I mean? And they know their family can see in their eyes the wear and tear on their mind and body, and they are afraid, and then they're ashamed of themselves. So to sit down in front of their loved ones on a regular basis or even on a holiday where they're like, nah, I don't want to go home for the holidays. Because they can't look at their family in the eyes because they are ashamed of who they are.
And I'm sorry.
And it's a lot of things to explain with that. Like these girls might come home with STDs.
Yep.
All kinds of things. So it's not just the prostitution. It's all the other things that come with it that they're ashamed to tell their family too.
And the number one thing we tell them when we speak to them is like, there's no judgment here. We don't judge you. We're here to help you.
100%.
Because a lot of these girls, sometimes they don't want to open up. They don't want to say what they've been through. But once they get comfortable and they start talking to you, you'll be like, wow, like,
They talk.
Yeah, they'll open up to you and they'll let you know, everything that's been going on, what they've been going through. So
all of us at this table have somebody on speed dial that is a complainant that calls us. 100%.
24 hours a day.
100%. So we do. If you want to think about whatever the breakdown is, you think normal police work is 70% police work, 30% social work. We probably do about
90% social work.
90% social work, 10% police work. We're running and gunning trying to take. The case is over. The case is over. Detective Gonzalez there's something in the Daily News today. You can read it later. Her case just concluded. Guys, each guy took 10 years, right? but she's still speaking to the two young ladies that's involved in that, right? She's still, I got to call them up to tell them everything was fine. And it's a year later. It's 2 years later.
And you guys also had to participate in investigating officers that you guys have found, or is that a...
No,
So-
we don't.
so-
We don't.
right. So what happens is
'Cause
when
we've heard those stories over the last couple of years too, where there's been some officers. that
So
have been
when
complicit in
officers
this.
get investigated, the Internal Affairs Bureau, remember I told you we're broken up into different
Right,
bureaus?
okay.
What will happen is if, let's say, if you're asking me if we got a lead on an officer, where we would end up taking it is we would end up quickly saying, hey, listen, we'll call Internal Affairs. And then we just brief Internal Affairs on what our case is, and then they just take off with, so they may take off with a segment of the case. So we may handle a certain part, and they will investigate the officer part. No, we don't do any investigations on police officers.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, NYPD Human Trafficking, it's Human Trafficking Awareness Month. If you know somebody or you are suspecting even that somebody needs help, obviously you want to talk to them. But we have services in the city. We just had the mayor's office up here too. Let me find those papers.
NYC.gov.
Yes.
Right, and I have a bunch of numbers. If I can give you a bunch of numbers to call for resources.
NYC.gov/end GBV, gender-based violence, which is for human trafficking and getting some support there as well.
So, like I said, if you want, I can give you a bunch of numbers. I have a bunch of numbers where to call us.
Well, we'll post it. We'll post it for you online.
Okay,
so
that's
leave
great.
some stuff behind with
Okay,
us
so I'll
and
leave
we'll-
some stuff behind for you.
Definitely. Thank you guys for your time
Thank you.
today.
Thank you. Thank you
Very much.